IPC Sunday School, Lesson 15, David who feared God. Please read the reading portion, 1 Samuel chapters 22 to 30, before proceeding with the lesson. In the previous lesson, we saw David's childhood. How did David become famous in Israel? We also saw how Saul grew jealous and wanted to kill David. And at the end, we saw Saul left pursuing David. Now let's understand some other incidents from the life of David. David, Nabal, and Abigail. So David went and lived in the wilderness of Paran. Near to Paran, in a place called Carmel, there lived a very rich man from the tribe of Caleb. His name was Nabal, meaning wicked fool. He had a beautiful and a wise wife, and her name was Abigail, which means father's joy. So David and his men had treated Nabal's shepherds kindly, protecting them from harm. So when there was a sheep shearing festival in Nabal's house, David sent 10 of his men to Nabal, asking for an invitation to attend the festival. But the foolish Nabal despised the message and sent the messengers back, saying that there was no place in the feast for beggars. On hearing this, David set out with 400 men to the house of Nabal. Now Nabal's wise-hearted wife Abigail understood the danger they were in, and she made haste and quickly prepared a feast for David and his men, and then rides out to meet David with an apology. She met David on the way and asked forgiveness for Nabal's foolishness. She also requested David to remember her when he is blessed by God. David sent her back in peace. The next day, when all the wine had gone out of Nabal, Abigail told him all that had happened. On hearing these things, his heart turned to stone, and on the 10th day the Lord struck him, and he died. David heard this and sent messengers to bring Abigail and received her as his wife. Now David has a second chance to kill Saul, but he spares him again. Now Saul heard that David was hiding in the wilderness of Ziph, and so he pursued David with 3,000 men. Saul slept within the camp, and the army was encamped around him. Abner, the commander, also was with him. David, along with Abishai, came to the camp. And Abishai provoked David to kill Saul, but David did not. He simply took Saul's spear and water jug, again showing Saul that he could have taken his life. Saul was once again ashamed and thanked David and returned to his palace. Now David in the land of the Philistines. So David fled from Saul and came to Gath to King Achish in the land of Philistines with his 600 men. King Achish gave him Ziklag for dwelling. Later Ziklag came under the dominion of Judah. The king of Gath trusted David, and when the Philistines went to war against Israel, he requested David's help. King Achish made David the head of his bodyguards. But the Philistines did not trust David and asked King Achish to send him back, and David returned to Israel. When David and his men returned, the Amalekites had attacked Ziklag and burnt it, and had taken all the women and flocks as captives. God asked David to pursue the Amalekites. So David and his 600 men followed them, and he met an Amalekite servant at Brook Besor. With the help of this servant, they pursued the Amalekites and killed every one of the enemy. He recovered all the Amalekites took and divided the spoil among all his men. Let's see some of the lessons that we learn from David's life from the past two lessons. God provides for us when we submit to His will. David is called the man after God's own heart. Similarly, we should always see God's will in everything we do, for He is our very present help in troubles, and He will definitely give us victory over our enemies. The second thing we learn from David is that we should not take revenge, but leave it to God. David had chance to kill Saul twice, but both the times he spared Saul's life. David knew that Saul's end will come, and that it is not for him to determine, but it is the Lord's decision. We need to be wise in our dealings in our daily lives. And if we are faithful in our dealings with God and man, God will definitely promote us and give us greater glory. God bless you all. Thank you.